to tell a story about Eminem. Now, before I get started, I want to say I was not um, assaulted or harassed in any way. That's not what this story really is about. It's just about a meeting that I had with him that I think just could have been handled better. It was a very unsafe. It was a situation where I felt unsafe and just had like, it created the worst ideas of what could happen were just rolling in my head the whole time. So here's what happened. Eminem had heard me writing music and he asked to meet me. And there's a lot of, okay, so he asked to meet me, and because I told him that one of my songs was for him, he goes, "What makes you think I'll do it?" Because it's good enough. And I was, when I was younger, I had like a little bit of an attitude. Thought I was the greatest at everything that I did, and just I wouldn't say that I was full of myself. I just really understood that I was talented. And I gotta say, I feel like, well, let's not get into that. I'll say this. I'll just tell you the story, okay? So he asked to meet me, and I agreed. I was like, okay, I'll meet you. And he said, bring your notes. So he met me somewhere close to my house. He did not want to go to where I lived to pick me up. He wanted to pick me up somewhere near my house. So because I told him I didn't have a car, and I tried to give him directions, and he said he'd figure it out. So they were like in a nearby city. I live in Sacramento. At the time, I was living somewhere else, closer to San Francisco, and he happened to be in San Francisco at the time. I don't know what's in San Francisco, but that's where he was. And he decided to come out and meet me at like a mall, in the parking lot of a mall. And he said to come alone. And I thought that was kind of weird, but I was really afraid that if I had said no, that I would be missing my shot at a big opportunity. So I said, sure, fine, whatever. And I actually went with a few people, but only because they had other things to do. So they went inside the mall while I was waiting outside for him in the mall, in the parking lot. And at the time, there were no video cameras in the parking lot. So there's no proof of this meeting happening at all whatsoever. It's just like he said, she said kind of a deal. And I know I've never told this story because I know a lot of people just will not believe me. But I think at the time, he was so brand new to having his own label. It was like 2003, 2004, at the end of 2003. And he was having his movie and all this stuff. I didn't know quite as much about him. I was not a huge Eminem fan at the time. I just was not. But I also figured I'd have other opportunities if this didn't work out, because that's just what I thought. That's what you think when you're young, that there's time. And so we met. He came to the parking lot in two cars. He was in the first car of like an SUV, like a two big black cars. They were identical, and they both had tinted windows. And he was in the back seat of one with a driver, and in the other car were like 5 black men. And the driver was also black. I just think that's funny, but whatever. And because whatever, that's funny to me. But he was being very polite. You know, he said hello. We shook hands. He was being very professional. And at the time, at that moment, I was in the middle of writing another song. So, you know, I asked him to give me a second while I finished this, and then I shouldn't have done that, but I did that anyways. And then we continued our short conversation. There wasn't a lot said. It was like our names and just a regular greeting, kind of who are you kind of a thing. And he said, okay, we'll get in the car. He said, get in. And so I tried to get into the door, and he didn't want to scoot over. And I said, well, scoot over. And he just would not give up his seat. And I thought because he was being so polite and professional that it wouldn't be like so out of the ordinary for him to give up his seat. You know, that's what men are supposed to do. But like I said, he was new. He was new. It's not really his thing probably to do that for women. It's not one of his strong suits, is what I'm saying. So he didn't want to give up his seat, and I felt a little weird about that. But in that moment, when he said it a couple times, he said, other side. And I said, just scoot over. Other side. And then I was like, why can't I just get in the car? And I smiled. And then the driver and the guys in the other car all yelled at me, other side. And I was like, why am I being yelled at? It wasn't like in a funny way either. I didn't even think it was funny at the time. They were actually getting annoyed with me. And so I was about to get in the other side, but in that moment, I had all these flashes of like the worst things that could possibly happen. It had suddenly occurred to me that I was alone with like 6 or 7 grown men, and they were large, like big guys. I'm short. I'm like 5'2", and I was very skinny at the time. And so I suddenly felt like I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but just like a little bit scared about the situation. And I don't know if I should have been, you know, because I had gotten like that far. I should have just kept going. I know a lot of people will be thinking that I should have just got in the car and saw whatever it was he had to offer me. But I was just thinking, like, if I go, he could steal my notes, he could knock me off, leave me in the ditch somewhere. Nobody knows I'm here. I didn't tell my friends that I came with what I was gonna do. I didn't tell him who I was meeting. I didn't say anything. It was a totally stupid thing for me to agree to and to be like protective about it. Like, yeah, I'm just, you know, like it's my thing. Like, oh, I'm meeting Eminem, I feel special. And I think he just sort of took advantage of that. And I don't even know why I was like that. That's so not part of my personality. I'm not like that at all. But that's what happened. And in that moment, I just got really scared. I thought if I went around the car, that the car in the back would try to smash me between the 2 cars and then drive off. I was really scared of them. And I don't know why. Like I said, I didn't know anything about them at all. But it just was a scary moment. And so I backed away, and I said, you know what, I don't have my notes right now. I told him I didn't have my notes, and I don't know if I could remember the songs. I could probably do something else, but I'm just gonna, you know, and then I walked away from him, and I said, I'm sorry. And he had like this confused look on his face, and they drove away. I never saw him again. Um, but that's my story with Eminem, my meeting with him. I think it could have been handled better. I think that they took advantage of the fact that I was just a young girl. And um, I don't know if they knew they were doing that or it's just something that is just how they are. But um, so I missed my opportunity with Eminem, and I feel stupid about it a lot of the time. But I feel like I could have been raped. It was a bad situation. I could have been just treated horribly just because I was alone. I didn't have an agent and a lawyer. Nobody knew anything about this with me. So it was a bad situation. It really was when you think about it. And it wasn't my time. It wasn't like the right time for me. Um, I I had happened to be in a job at that very same time, like 2 weeks beforehand. I was working in an ice cream shop where my boss had actually asked me to be his girlfriend for the weekends when his wife was out of town. And so and I didn't say anything about that either. Because it's just one of those he said, she said moments. You can't prove anything. Um, so that's my Me Too video. Uh, it happens. I'm not. I, I'm not a hater of Eminem. I just think he could have handled that better. I still love his music, and he's trying to be this big shot against Trump, and that's fine with me. In fact, I appreciate that, but I have to tell this story. So there. It's a very long video. It's not that long of a story. It's too long of a video for the story, and I'm sorry about that. I probably should have worn makeup. But yeah, it happens. It happens, and it probably happens often.